English cricket walked into the Oval carrying a scandal it never asked for, and by the time the floodlights dimmed on day one of the second test against New Zealand, nobody was talking about a nightclub anymore. They were talking about cricket again, and what a strange, swinging, emotionally exhausting day it turned out to be. Let's rewind for a moment, because the backstory here is almost stranger than the cricket itself. England arrived at Lord's for the first test of this series and walked away with a comfortable 115-run win, the kind of result that should have set the tone for a confident, settled summer. Instead, in the early hours of the following Monday morning, Captain Ben Stokes and fast bowler Gus Atkinson found themselves in the middle of a nightclub altercation in Chelsea after quietly breaking the team's newly introduced midnight curfew. A scuffle broke out involving a rugby player from a nearby club celebration, a security officer needed stitches, and within hours the story had grown far bigger than the test win itself ever could. The ECB launched a formal investigation, the independent cricket regulator was brought in, and suddenly the biggest question hanging over English cricket wasn't who would win this series, it was whether Ben Stokes would even captain his country again. So, when the two teams finally walked out at the Oval, two of England's biggest names were conspicuously missing from the field. No Stokes, no Atkinson. Instead, Joe Root was handed the armband as interim captain, a decision that quietly hinted England wanted to keep the door open for Stokes to return once the disciplinary cloud eventually cleared, rather than handing permanent control to vice-captain Harry Brook. Three uncapped names took the field for their very first test appearance on the same afternoon: wicketkeeper James Rew, batter Jordan Cox, and fast bowler Sonny Baker. All thrown into one of the most chaotic, pressure-soaked build-ups English cricket has experienced in years. Root won the toss and chose to bowl first without much hesitation, trusting a morning surface that had been freshly dampened by a delayed start after overnight drizzle rolled through London. It looked, for a good while, like the perfect decision. Matthew Fisher, playing his first test since 2022, and finally back on home turf, struck early, removing Devon Conway cheaply with a ball that nipped away just enough, and gifting debutant James Rew his very first test catch behind the stumps. Moments later, Jofra Archer, returning to red ball cricket for the first time since his Ashes outing in Adelaide back before Christmas, produced an absolute beauty that found New Zealand captain Tom Latham's edge, with Jacob Bethel snapping up a sharp, instinctive catch at gully. 2 wickets down inside the opening hour, New Zealand reeling, and England's new look-pace attack looking every single bit the part on a morning built for seam bowling. But cricket has a habit of punishing certainty, and this match was determined to remind everybody of that lesson early. Henry Nicholls, stepping into the void left by Kane Williamson's recent retirement, dug in alongside Rakin Ravindra, and slowly, patiently, the innings began to breathe again. Nicholls eventually chopped one back onto his own stumps off the disciplined Josh Tongue, looking visibly frustrated with himself as he trudged off, and Ravindra, who had looked by far the most fluent batter on view all morning, opened the face a fraction too early and steered one straight to gully, where Bethel completed his second sharp catch of the morning session. 2 new wickets had fallen, but also 2 new heroes for New Zealand were quietly beginning to emerge, because Daryl Mitchell and Tom Blundell walked out together and decided almost instantly that enough was enough. What followed was the genuine turning point of the entire day. The moment momentum quietly but unmistakably shifted sides. Mitchell and Blundell put together an unbroken stand that dragged New Zealand back from the brink into real, comfortable control, reaching 166 for 4 at tea, a complete reversal of where the morning session had left them looking fragile and exposed. Root even turned to Harry Brook's occasional medium pace in search of something different, a quiet sign of how desperately England were hunting for a fresh idea after their early advantage slipped away. Mitchell kept finding the gaps with growing confidence. Blundell kept rotating the strike with calm precision, and for one entire session, New Zealand looked like they had completely wrestled the day away from England. Then came the debut magic everybody at the Oval had been quietly waiting for. Sonny Baker, the new boy with the ball, finally got his reward in the evening session, removing Mitchell just 6 runs short of a well-earned half-century with a short, sharp ball the informed batter simply could not control. It was exactly the kind of moment young fast bowlers dream about for years before it ever happens, and Baker's emotional reaction afterward, embracing his parents during the cap presentation, and admitting he could barely contain himself, told you everything about what that breakthrough meant to him. From there, New Zealand's middle and lower order leaned on something England hadn't quite planned for: the calm, fearless hands of Glenn Phillips walking out at exactly the right moment. Blundell continued well past his 50 before eventually falling into Bethel trap, caught attempting an overly ambitious shot, and Bethel struck again soon after to remove Nathan Smith cheaply for just 4. Yet through every fresh wicket falling around him, Phillips simply refused to budge an inch, absorbing genuinely hostile, short-pitched bowling from a rejuvenated Archer, ducking and weaving away from bouncers that consistently touched the high 80s on the speed gun, and still finding boundaries whenever England's intensity dipped even slightly. By the time bad light and fading energy brought the day to a close, New Zealand stood at 291 for 7, Phillips unbeaten on 49, Kyle Jamieson alongside him just beginning to find his feet. It was a total nobody would have predicted at lunch when New Zealand sat on a fragile 75 for 2 and looked there for the taking. Strip away the storylines and the numbers tell their own story. 3 debutants thrown into the deep end delivered, Rue with his gloves, Baker with the ball, and the supporting cast around them holding their nerve in front of a packed oval crowd. England will look back at this day with mixed emotions for wickets claimed on a pitch that offered genuine encouragement, yet also a sense that more discipline in the closing session could have left New Zealand under real pressure rather than just shy of 300. For New Zealand, the manner of this recovery matters just as much as the runs on the board. Losing Williamson to retirement and still finding 2 batters willing to grind out a long partnership in difficult conditions says something about the depth this team is quietly building. Phillips, in particular, looked like a man enjoying every second of the contest, embracing the chaos around England's leadership crisis rather than letting it distract from the job at hand. As day 2 approaches, the questions multiply. Can England's new ball attack finish off the tail quickly and avoid conceding a substantial first innings total? Can Joe Root manage this fractured dressing room the way Stokes would have wanted? And looming over everything, will the captain himself even be allowed to return before the series or his career reaches its final chapter? One thing is certain, this match has stopped being just about cricket, and English cricket fans will be watching tomorrow with one eye on the scoreboard and the other firmly on the headlines.